Welcome, fans, to a special edition of the Great North Wrestling Podcast. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling, and I'm pleased to welcome tonight another special guest in our series of interviews covering the children of famous professional wrestlers, and this certainly is no exception. This interview will cover Kelly Slaughter's experiences as the daughter of Hall of Fame superstar Sergeant Slaughter in his professional wrestling career, and some of the issues that arise being a relative or child of a famous professional wrestler. But before we get into that, Kelly, thank you for coming on this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Well, I think it's a good place to start to ask your what it was like for you growing up in the household of not only a famous professional wrestler, but a man who has become he was and is a pop culture icon with his contract with GI Joe, and then his lengthy career across promotions, that being Sergeant Slaughter. What was that like? Can you give the fans an appreciation of that?
Sure. This is actually a question that I get asked a lot, and I have a really hard time answering it because he was wrestling since before I was born, so I don't really know any different. But it definitely had its perks. I mean, there was a point in my life where I thought everybody had somebody famous in their family because I had somebody famous in my family. So I thought everyone had somebody famous in their family. And so sometimes I would be like, so what does your dad do? Like, is your dad on TV? And then I found out that no, not everybody's dad or relative is on TV and asking for autographs when we're out. So it was definitely a unique experience, I think, because it was so different than what other people experience, but I didn't know any different. So, yeah.
So with that being said, did you have any, given the fact that you didn't know any different, looking back on your childhood, did you have any unique experiences or challenges with that notoriety, especially as you got older?
I'm sorry, my kitten. I just got a new kitten and I saved her. Her name is Boo. And she
Oh,
was just
nice.
walking on my little desk here, and I was afraid she was gonna knock something over. So I had to grab her. Anyway, I'm sorry.
That's all good.
Please repeat your question.
No problem. Just with that context that you said that you didn't know any different, and that was what you thought the modus operandi was for everyone. All that notwithstanding, did you have, especially looking back now on your childhood, did you have any unique experiences or challenges that came with your situation?
That is a really good question. I mean, the thing that's going to jump out me the most is when my dad was an Iraqi sympathizer and there were death threats and we had to have security, and people like literally were living in a Winnebago outside of our house. Our house was tapped so they could hear what was going on inside in case someone got by them. We were followed everywhere to make sure that we were safe. So we basically had 24-hour security. So that is probably the most different thing that I could think of off the top of my head. I'm trying to think of, I mean, we went to Disney World, and it was for an event that my dad was doing called the Goofy Games. And so we got to see a lot of like the park that other people don't normally get to see. And we got to be like front of the line all the time, and, like little things like that were perks. I'm trying to think. I would do like a lot of charity work with my dad. So I would go along with him for that. And I know that I met a lot of famous people, but I just didn't know who they were. I met a lot of wrestlers. I didn't know who they were. You know what I mean? I was young, I'm trying to think of anything. I mean, just, I I feel like the Iraqi sympathizer is like the biggest.
Well, yeah, and we'll circle back to some of that, but I did want to get into that with you. Approximately how old were you when that angle was playing out?
So I was in the 6th grade. So I was like around like 11, 12, 13, something like that. Probably around 12 years old because that was like 93,
Give
92.
92-ish, yeah,
So then
give
I
or
was
take.
13 in 92. And so, and I was in the 6th grade. And so we all know that's like such an awkward
Mm,
stage of
mhm, mhm,
adolescence. And my son is actually that age now, and he's in the 6th grade. And I'm like, you're gonna have a much better 6th grade than
mhm,
mommy did.
mhm, mhm.
um,
No doubt. Given how
yeah,
controversial that was, did your father explain to you what that whole angle was about, and did he get the family's input on his participation? Given that it was such a departure from the America's Hero character that he played for a long time before that.
yeah. So he actually did. He says that he talked to the whole family, my sister, my mother, and I. But I don't recall the conversation beforehand. Like I recall after the decision was made, that he was going to do it, and then him talking to us about it. And I feel like that is when he smartened us up to the business. At least for myself, my sister's 4 years older than me, so he may have told her about smartened her up faster than he did me or sooner. But that's pretty much when he said, "This is not. You're going to see a picture of Dad with his arm around Saddam Hussein. That's Dad didn't meet Saddam. You know what I mean? Like so that's pretty much when he smartened me up to the business, and it was a difficult period for us for sure.
At what point did the legit death threat start, and was security dispatched to your residence, etc., right at the start of the angle? Did they sort of preconceive that, or how did those? I read a lot about that there were actual legit death threats and some incidences. Can you recount any of those off the top of your head?
Yes. So they made the threats. They called into the WWE offices in Stanford, and it was like right away. Like I mean, the first, my dad's on TV, and immediately they're getting calls, and they took him seriously, and they should have, because what I found out recently that I did not know back then was not only were there death threats um, against us and also against the McMahons. But they knew my sister's name. They knew my name. They knew what school we went to. They knew where we lived. And, this was before the internet. Like, there was no internet. You couldn't Google. Like, we had paid money so that we were like unlisted. We had like a private number. We had a private address. Like, you couldn't find us. And where we lived in Connecticut was a very small town. And we were on a gravel road, and it was unmarked because my dad kept taking the sign down.
Mm.
So, we were very private, and we only had one neighbor, and we were on acres of land. And so it was taken very seriously because they knew who we were, and they knew our names and our real names. Like, they weren't just saying, we're going to go get Sergeant Slaughter and his family. Like, we're going to go kill Robert Remus, Kelly Remus. You know what I mean? So,
Mm.
it was a very scary. I probably should have put her up. I'm
No,
sorry.
that's all good. We love pets on the Hannibal TV.
She's only 8 weeks old, and I found her. I didn't find her. A friend of mine actually found her in a storm drain. Somebody had dumped her.
Oh, right.
It's a long story, but so we got her out of the storm drain, and so I was gonna name her Storm, but I ended up naming her Boo. Um, so anyway, so she's like wild and all over the place now that she's kind of come out of her shell and trust me. She's just she's adorable, but she's distracting, and I should have put her up. Sorry.
No, that's all good. The one collateral question I wanted to ask you associated with that was, how did he feel? I understand, or the mythology has it that he was going to be asked to burn an American flag, and then he burned the Hulk Hogan shirt. How did he feel about that specific? Because I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, he refused to do that.
He refused. They wanted him to do that, and he absolutely refused. He was like, I'm not doing that. He himself did not serve, but family members served, and he was, even though he's Sergeant Slaughter, Robert Remus is a patriot. I mean, he loves his country too. And he was like, there is no way I am burning the American flag. Like that's too far. I'm not going to do that. And so, he tells the story about he heard one of the announcers saying it, and he was like, no, don't even say that I'm doing it, because they're already threatening to kill my family. You know what I mean? So, but no, he was like, I'm not. That was a line that he was not going to cross.
And looking back on it now, to your understanding, did he have any regrets with, or does he have any regrets with how that angle played out, notwithstanding the fact that I guess it was all part of the booking that he would want his country back and become America's hero again? Do you think he would do that again, or what were his thoughts on it looking back in hindsight?
He was so good at what he did. I mean, I don't think anyone could have played that part the way he did. I don't think he regrets it. I think he knew going in that it was going to be controversial. Now, when they first started it and had started talking about it, we weren't at war yet. Now, there may have been a different consideration had we already been at war. Maybe he would have not done it, but at the time we weren't at war yet. There was just a lot of conflict, and it looked like we were heading that way, but nobody knew. And so I think he would do it again. But I don't think it would go well now, like in the present time. I don't think it would go over in the same way. You know what I mean? I just think it would be different now. I don't think that they would be able to. I think the country's a lot different now than it was back then. So I don't know now, but I think he would do it. Like if he had to do it over again, would he do it? Yeah, he would do it. He had fun. I mean, wrestlers will tell you it's more fun to be the heel, to be the bad guy. And I can tell you, just in the little bit of time that I've been out in the public, it is kind of fun to be the meat guy. You know what I mean? It's more fun. So he had fun doing it. And I'll tell you this, he was so good at what he did. Not only did he have bomb threats, but years and years later, I was watching some of his promos from that time period with my dad, like literally sitting next to my dad, watching them on the computer. And I started to get mad, and I like smacked him, and I was like, Dad. He was like, what? And I was like, no wonder there were death threats against the family, because you were so good. Like, I want to kill you right now. You know what I mean? Like just watching everything that you were saying about America and about Americans and, this great country and everything. It was just like, I get it now. Like, I understand. Like, I was totally marking out. And he's like sitting right there. But I'm like, Dad, that just goes to show like how good you were at what you did. Like, I'm your daughter and I'm watching this and I'm getting mad at you.
Yeah. Extreme. Well, one of the reasons why we're, still talking about an angle all these decades later, one of the fans here is talking about, Sarge's perennial opponent with the Iron Sheik in the boot camp match. And it was actually one of the fans on social media also asked about your knowledge of his relationship with Cosgrove, the Iron Sheik, and any thoughts on his passing, as it might go down to be, at least in WWF terms, the Sarge's most famous opponent.
So the Iron Sheik and my dad go way, 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 way back. They are both from Minnesota, lived in Minnesota. They, if I remember correctly, and somebody might be able to correct me on this, but they trained together. He and my mom and dad lived in the same apartment complex. like in Louisiana or something like that, in one of those territories where they were wrestling together. And he would come over and they would go to the match together, and they were friends. They played rivals, of course, but they were friends. And my dad, this was before I was born, but my dad likes to tell the story of Iron Sheik holding my sister and reading her like a bedtime story or reading her a book. And with his accent and everything, he would be saying bud, bud instead of bird. And my dad was like, my daughter's going to start calling them buds instead of birds, just funny things like that. But yeah, I mean, they go back pretty much from the beginning, and they were friends. And I was actually at my dad's when the Iron Sheik passed, and we saw that he had passed. And so I actually broke the news to my dad, and I was crying. I get a little choked up now thinking about it. So.
Okay.
Not that, I mean, I wasn't close to Iron Sheik, but I think it's because it's one of my dad's good friends. You know what I mean? And it's a wrestler, and it's sad. It was hard on my dad, and it puts his mortality to light too. Thanks for making me cry, Jack.
Sorry, we'll switch it a little bit here, because one of the fans wanted to know about if you had any memories of seeing your father, which I certainly do as a kid, in the G.I. Joe cartoons.
I do. I only know his parts though, because I fast forwarded the movie, so I could only watch him. But yeah, I do remember that, and I remember I had the mail away G.I. Joe, that his first one, and I brought it to school for show and tell. We had just moved to a new state. We just moved from North Carolina to Connecticut, and I brought it in for show and tell to tell everyone who my dad was. And I just remember holding up this little figure and being like, this is my dad. And it was like radio silence. It was like crickets. And then one kid was like, your dad's plastic. Completely not like no one was impressed. And I don't know if it was just like they didn't believe me or what, but I just remember feeling like this huge letdown. Like I was so excited to be like, look at who my dad is. And they were like, so
not literally, kids.
No.
Did you mentioned that when you were younger, you met a lot of wrestlers and maybe didn't recognize them or know who they were, etc. But looking back now, I'm sure you attended some of the cards that he was on. Do you have any memorable recollections from that, or meeting specific wrestlers that stand out?
Yes. So one of my first memories of seeing my dad wrestle was actually him wrestling the Iron Sheik. And I believe we were in the Poconos, maybe. Sorry, I'm just reading those. Yeah, Norwalk. I think that was like probably the closest blockbuster we had to where we lived was in Norwalk.
Cool.
Very cool. He was wrestling the Iron Sheik, and the Iron Sheik had a weapon, and he would put it in his belt, and the ref would check his boot, and then he would put it in his boot, and the ref would check his belt. So the ref never saw this weapon. And then they start to wrestle, and my sister and I are like, he's gonna kill our dad, and so they wrestled, and he took out that weapon and he hit my dad, and my dad busted open and he's bleeding. And so my sister lost it. And again, she's 4 years older than me. So I kind of took her lead, and then I lost it. And, we're thinking Iron Sheik is going to kill our dad. And long story short, the match ends. My dad wins. My mom has to tell us that your dad won. He's still alive. And then we looked up, and my mom was whisking us to go back behind the curtain. She went with my sister, and I ran through the crowd and busted through and ran up to my dad and was tugging on him. And so he was like, oh, Kelly. And so then we walked backstage together through the curtain, where my mom was standing there holding my sister I'm going to kill you. You know, why would you do that? Your kids were in the audience. And he was like, I didn't know he was going to do that. You know, I don't know if that's true, if he really knew or not, but he says he didn't. And but that was, I think that was the second match I saw. The first match, what he was wrestling Nikita Koloff or one
Nikolai?
of them. Yeah, Nikolai Koloff. Yes.
Nikolai Volkov.
Yeah, Nikolai Volkov. Thank you. And he was wrestling him. And I was like on the chair cheering and like blowing a whistle and, you know, like having a great time. So to go from that to then seeing, you know, my dad possibly being murdered in front of me, that was one of the last matches that we saw for quite some time. My parents were like, okay, my mom was like, you're not taking the kids to wrestling. You can take them to events where you're not wrestling. But you're not taking the kids to wrestling events anymore. So I didn't get to go to any more until I was a little bit older. And I mean, it was pretty intense. I mean, if you really think about that, I mean, I was probably 5 years old, 6 years old, maybe 7, watching that, you know. So that was intense. I'm trying to think of any other stories like
maybe when you were older.
So when I was older, we went to see when he was the commissioner and the whole DX era, and we were backstage. My sister and I were backstage. You know, there was rumors that China was my dad's long lost daughter. And so my dad brought China over to us to introduce us to her. And so he introduced us to her, or introduced her to us as our long lost sister. So that was a good laugh. And then she was like, hi, my name is Joni. And she was just a very sweet and nice woman. So there was that. I mean, I've met The Rock. I've met so many. I should probably say who I haven't met. That would be a shorter list.
How did he feel? A fan asked a question about that time frame when he was the commissioner. How did he feel about really transitioning? Because he had a lengthy in-ring career. How did he feel about that role transitioning from wrestling to being that on-air personality?
I think he was just happy to be getting a payday still, to be honest. You know, they don't always get that as they age, wrestlers, you know. So I think he was just happy to still be out there and still be working and still being relevant. And I think he had a good time too, because it was something different, because he wasn't playing Sarge anymore. Now he was the commissioner. And I think DX, Triple H, and they had some good material that they used against him with the mask with the wiper and
the spitting, right.
Yeah, because he spits when he gets really excited and talks, and so yeah, I think he had a good time.
That was of course the Attitude Era. That was of course a real period of change when you know, the traditional product, such as it was up to then, really took a complete different direction. And from your dad's perspective, being an individual with such a long, lengthy career, traditionalist territory career, did he ever share with you his thoughts on that paradigm shift in the product, or did he just go with it?
He just went with it. He really didn't talk to us much about that. He really didn't talk to us a lot about the business and about what he was doing. I mean, he may say, hey, you know, girls, if you're not doing anything, I'm going to be on Raw tonight. And this is like around what time I'm going to be on if you want to watch. And if we were able to watch, we would. This was before DVR. So, you know, if we were able to watch, we would. And I think that time frame of him being on TV when we were older, I remember watching something with my sister, and we were in my mom's living room. and it like cut to commercial, and we had both gone, and we didn't even realize it, but we had both gone from like sitting and like relaxing on the couch to we were both like standing by the time the commercial came. And so we're both standing in my mom's living room, and we just kind of looked at each other, and we were like, that was dad. Like, that was dad, you know, like, holy crap. You know, it was you know, it's like surreal because he, you know, you got to think about it, like he is our dad. And so everybody else, he's this like, you know, legendary professional wrestler and Sergeant Slaughter. And like, it's so awesome. But to us, he's just our dad. You know what I mean? So it's like, and that's just what he does for a living. Like, I don't really know anything about it. You know what I mean? Like, most kids don't have any clue about what their parents do. I mean, they know what they do, but they don't know what goes into it. They don't meet their coworkers. You know what I mean? Like, that was just what he did to make money and to pay the bills and to provide for us. And so it wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, we didn't really think about it. And so it wasn't until we were older and we were watching it, and we were like, oh my God, that was that. And like, he's on TV, and like, holy crap. You know?
And the impact he had on the industry. Yes. A lot of fans like to know if you had any particular interactions with, you know, the ubiquitous chairman of the board at the time, Vince McMahon.
So I have met Vince a few times. He was always very nice to me. You know, everyone was always nice when we were being introduced by my dad. If they didn't know who we were, it was like, hey, hi, you're just another fan, you know, hello. They would give us the time of day. But when they knew who we were, we definitely got more of them, if that makes sense. They would make more time for us. But with Vince, he was always very polite. Hello, how are you? It's nice to see you. You've grown since last I saw you, you know, things like that. But that was pretty much it. Like, we weren't hanging out. You know, me and Vince weren't having drinks or anything.
Well, and that's interesting because it seems to be without exception that Vince is extremely, or was extremely polite to family members and just generally a gentleman. A fan here is asking, what is Sarge doing these days?
So Sarge is very active on Comic-Cons, different kind of cons, and he does appearances and signings. He filmed a movie, but I think we're not really sure. Like, he filmed some parts, and then I think they might have gone through their budget. So we're not sure what's happening with the movie, but he still does voiceovers. He just had last year, he had some action figures come out with Hasbro and then Valaverse. So he's still really active out there. He's very active on Twitter. And he doesn't really know how to, I'm sorry, X, formerly known as Twitter.
Yes. Depending on where you're coming from, yes.
Right.
Twitter X, yes.
Yeah, Twitter X Twitter. And so he's very active on that. He does have an Instagram. He does have a Facebook page, but he is the most active on Twitter. And I find it hilarious. I think the fans enjoy it, but I think it's funny because he really doesn't know what he's doing. So he will tweet and retweet everything that like comes up in his notifications. And I'm like, Dad, you don't have to do that. I've tried to talk to him, everyone, and he does not listen. He does what he wants. So, but that's all him.
He's definitely seems to be on Twitter or X or whatever, a big emoji guy, and I can respect that.
What's funny about that is before we had emojis, before we had cell phones, he would write us a note. And like if he was leaving before we woke up, and he would leave us a note, and it would be like, "Dear Nicole and Kelly, I am, you know, blah, 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 blah." And he would draw a deer. Okay. And then Nicole and Kelly would be little smiley faces. Nicole and Kelly. So it would be dear Nicole and Kelly. And then it would be like, I, and it would be a drawing of an eye. So he literally, like, the way he tweets is how he texts, and he would like draw that out. I'm like, who had the time to sit there and like draw a deer?
That's awesome. That fills in a lot of blanks for those of us that follow Sarge on Twitter for sure.
Yeah.
How did your father's career in the business influence your own career choices?
They did not at all. So when I was younger, I wanted to wrestle. He never really, he discouraged it. He didn't want the wrestler's life for me or for my sister. My sister never expressed any interest. I did. And he didn't want that for me. And to be honest with you, what I saw of the role of women in wrestling wasn't what I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to do what he did. I didn't want to wrestle women. I didn't want to be the manager. I wanted to be wrestling the men. And there was not anyone doing that at that time. So I didn't see what I wanted to do. And so I kind of was like, no, that's really not what I want to do in wrestling. So I'm just going to kind of go in a different direction. And I feel like had he wanted me to be a wrestler, he would have pushed me more. And then that would have been like me in China beating all the boys' butts, you know, like I could have been her sister, you know what I mean? Like, I think that would have been really fun. What could have been, you know. Now that I am more into fitness and my health is more of a priority and fitness is more of a priority in my life, I kind of am like kicking myself like, I totally should have done that, because I think I would have been really good at it. And I definitely have the mouth for it. And my mouth gets me in trouble a lot. But I think it would have been fun. And I think I would have, you know, carried on my dad's legacy and the family legacy and the name and everything. And I don't think that's I'm never going to say never, but I am 44. I'm not getting any younger. But yeah, no, I got into massage. I was a massage therapist for a while. I did skincare. I did medical billing in a doctor's office. Now I'm a mom and a wife.
Cool.
So I do teach fitness class at a gym here. I'm going for my to become a personal trainer. And my long-term goal, which I guess is kind of just go into wrestling. I want to open a gym. That's like my long-term goal. I do Spartan races, which is a brand of obstacle course racing. So I do those. I'm not like an elite or a pro at it or anything like that. I do it for fun. But I think it would be cool to kind of incorporate, you know, OCR into the gym that I want to open. So I guess fitness is kind of along the same lines as, you know, you got to be fit to wrestle. But yeah, I think that ship has sailed.
Well, maybe in the ring, maybe not. But did you ever consider doing some kind of on-air work or interviewing, anything like that in the business? Something not directly related to marketing, maybe not something directly related to in-ring competition?
No, actually, I never really even thought about the other side of wrestling.
Oh, fair enough. A fan sent me a question on social media wanting to know, your dad was quite well known for his promos where he's referring to individuals as maggots and pukes and the whole drill instructor deal. Did you ever experience that in a jocular manner as a kid? Did he ever turn that character on when he was at home, or was that completely separate?
So Sarge was not allowed in our house. So no, he never did. Now, I'm not going to say he never yelled at us when we did something bad, like when we were in trouble or anything like that. I think I was more of the troublemaker and the mischievous one than my sister. She was like the goody, two shoes, never did anything wrong. So I was the little rebellious one. So I was one who was always getting in trouble. So he, you know, I think any dad can be scary when they're mad at you and, you're in trouble and everything. But I do remember he may not like me telling the story,
Go for it.
but I always thought that as long as he couldn't catch me, I was okay. Because once I got to my room, my bedroom door opened into my room, and then there was a wall right there. And then my room kind of like opened up. So if I could just get to my room, I didn't have a lock on my door. And I would sit down, I would close my door and sit down and put my legs up on the wall that was right there, and he couldn't get in. And we didn't have these hollow like cardboard doors that they have now. We had like solid wood doors. And I remember one time I must have done something really bad because he was really mad and he was chasing me through the house. And I was like, I'm sorry. And I got to my room and I shut the door and I put my legs up, and he's pounding on the door. And I look up and my door is literally going like this every time he's hitting the door. And I was like, oh my God. And then he walked away because he realized that he wasn't going to get in. And then I just like hid in my room for the rest of the night. And then that was it.
Why was the Sarge character not allowed in the house? Was that your mom's call?
Yeah, that was my mom's call. And I think my mom, well, one, that kept his feet on the ground. It didn't allow him to have this big head. And also that Sarge wasn't my dad. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't playing himself. He was playing a character. And so my mom's like, when you come home, that you leave that at the arena. Like, you leave that in the locker room. You don't bring that home because that's not who you are. And I'm not married to Sergeant Slaughter. I'm married to Bob Remus. My parents met when they were very young, and they married, right after my mom turned 18. They got married, and so they've been together pretty much their whole lives. And so my mom knew him before he was famous and before he was Sarge. And so she was like, no, mister, you used to be a barber and a roofer. Like, you're not, no. Mm-hmm. That stays there. You are Bob when you come home, and you're Dad when you come home. So I think it actually really helped. I mean, my dad's a very big family man. He loves his family. So I don't think he would have let the business get to his head too much because he loves his family so much. But I do think it helped kind of keep him grounded.
Yeah, no, most definitely. When you're talking about some of his contemporaries that lived the gimmick per se, and they lost, thinking of Ric Flair, one of many who kind of became the character too. That separation psychologically is probably pretty wise.
Yes.
Fan is asking a question here that I'm not familiar with. How did Sarge get involved in that cartoon Teen Titans? I must have missed that one.
Yeah, somebody reached out to him. I think he's been in 2 episodes of, I think it was Go Teen Titans, not Teen Titans. I think it was Go Teen Titans. But somebody reached out and asked him if he would do it. And he was like, sure, I've got no problem doing it. Send me the script.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you recall that the circumstances behind the split with Titan Sports in the 80s over the G.I. Joe licensing deal when Sarge left WWF and went back to the AWA and did some work there. Do you recall any of that situation? Of course, came back in 90 or whatever it was.
Yeah. So when my dad was approached by Hasbro to be in G.I. Joe, my dad actually thought it was a great idea, wanted to do it. Talked to my mom about it. And, my dad was kind of torn between, what do I do? Do I do this? Do I not do this? And my mom was like, you can wrestle anytime. How often do you get to be a G.I. Joe? So he was like, all right. So then he went in to visit with Vince and talked to Vince about it. And Vince was like, yeah, Sarge, this is great. Because my dad was like, we can tie wrestling into, the toys with Hasbro, and, we can really tie this all together. And Vince was like, yeah, that's great. Only problem is I signed a contract yesterday with another toy company. So no,
Mm-hmm.
you can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was like, oh, I'm going to do it. So he did it anyway.
And obviously, I guess all was eventually forgiven when he made that return, in terms of at least the wrestling aspect. But does he retain a relationship with the GI Joe franchise to this day?
Oh yes, he is. My dad is a very loyal person, and so he is like a GI Joe ambassador. Like he is gung ho for Hasbro and GI Joe, and for anything that he does, he is. Even for Valaverse, also. You know, Time for Action and things like that. So yeah, thank you.
You're over.
Yeah.
It,
But yeah, he's definitely he definitely still has a relationship with them. They just came out with a figure, another GI Joe figure. Hasbro did.
that's great.
Mm-hmm.
What speaking in general terms, being a strong family man, and you know, putting his family first, what lessons or values did he instill in you that you've taken forward throughout your life?
So much. There's so much sage advice from my dad. Like, we don't own the electric company. You know, I wasn't born in a barn. I should leave the doors open. You know, things like I kid, but you know, the saying where he says, and this is in GI Joe, that you never ever let your enemies eat your breakfast. And I, younger, didn't understand that. I'm like, why would I let them have my breakfast? They're my enemy. I'm not going to feed them my breakfast, you know? And so it wasn't until I got older and I finally was like, Dad, what does that mean? And he told me, he was like, you don't let them get into your head. You know what I mean? And so that has been something that I've taken with me. Somebody said there was, I was having a little fun on Twitter myself and kind of got into like this tiny little feud. And I, again, was just having fun. And like I was saying, it is more fun to be like the bad guy. And somebody reached out to me and was like, who knows me and is a friend of mine. And they were like, I'm seeing everything that's going on in social media. And like, are you okay? And, you know, all this stuff. And I was like, what do you mean, am I okay? And they're like, well, you know, some of these people aren't being very nice. And I was like, I mean, these people don't know me, first of all. So whatever they say about me has absolutely no value in my life whatsoever because they don't know me. So whatever they're saying means nothing to me. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm having fun. Like I thought it was great,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just having a good time. And so I think that's something that, you know, my dad has taught me is like, these people don't know us. Like, let them say all this stuff that they want about your dad, but that's not your dad that they're talking about. They're talking about Sarge, and Sarge isn't your dad. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So kind of letting things roll off your back. And it has taken a long time and many years for me to be able to do that. Because when I was younger, I did take everything personally, and, you know, being in 6th grade and having people tell me that I'm a traitor, just like my dad. And like the things that I was getting said to me in school by people that knew me, you know, not my friends, but people that I went to school with. I mean, that was very, very difficult and hard to go through. I mean, I was literally tortured in school every single day. And because of what my dad did for a living. And so it was definitely something that you had to overcome, and it made me a stronger person. And, you know, I think having to walk into school every day like that, somebody asked me one day what my superpower is. And I said, my superpower is being able to look like I'm confident when I do not feel confident at all, because I would have to go into school every single day and face all of these people that knew me and knew my dad. And, my dad used to do events at our school and say these horrible, mean, awful things to me. Meanwhile, we're having death threats. So facing that and being able to walk in there with my head held high, my, chin up, chest out, and taking it and taking it and taking it and taking it every day. But I didn't just sit there and take it. I gave it back. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't just sit there and take it. But yeah, I think that would be some of the things that my dad has taught me and things that I've had to do because of who he is and the things that he did as Sarge.
One question also from social media is, do you have any knowledge of your father's experience working with the late Ultimate Warrior?
So I don't know a lot. I know they did not get along backstage, but I don't think Warrior got along with anyone. So I don't think that was that's like surprising or anything. I know years right before Warrior passed, they became more friendly, and I think Warrior said something to my dad and they had like a reconciliation, or there was something that happened. I think my dad would be better off telling the story because I don't want to mess it up. But I think the kind of what broke the ice was, I think my dad sent him a present and it was a potato. Like backstage at a wrestling event that they were both at. Again, this was recent, within the past few years. It was literally right before Warrior died, because I remember talking to my dad and him being happy that they kind of, were on a better term. And then I saw the news that Warrior died, and then I reached out to my dad and he was like, I know, it's so awful, and I think he was glad that they were able to have those moments to kind of reconcile and, for them both to be like, I was kind of a jerk. And then the other one to be like, yeah, I was a jerk too. You know what I mean? And just to both be adults about it.
Yeah, it sounded like Warrior did, did definitely make amends with several folks that he had some animosity with. Just kind of a generic question, but wrestling fans and the wrestling community have obviously, they've supported your dad from, the great hero to being the biggest heel, one of the biggest heels of all time, considering that time frame that we've talked about. But how do you feel about the fans that have been, involved, on a third party basis in your life in such a prominent manner? Because wrestling fans are some of the most loyal and passionate out there.
Yes, they are. And I mean that in a good way. I mean, again, we've had fans coming up to us since I can remember. So it's hard to really, you know what I mean? It's my dad loves his fans. He always makes time for his fans. I don't think he's ever turned down an autograph, except for one time, and that was he was in the bathroom at an airport, and somebody like passed a piece of paper and pen under the stall and like asked him to sign it. I think that was probably the only time he's really ever refused to sign an autograph for someone. But it was such a big presence in our lives. I don't really know what it would have been like if there weren't fans. I don't know. It's I don't know.
I guess it's kind of a double-edged sword in some respects, given that entirely unique experience that you went through with the Iraqi sympathizer thing that'll never be replicated again. I can't imagine, even in 1990, whatever it was, it's hard to believe that folks took it so seriously. I know kayfabe was still technically alive, but that must have been an indelible memory that you'll never forget.
Yeah.
In terms of the overall legacy of your father on the industry and his impact, how would you summarize that from your vantage point? Be it becoming one of the the most famous characters of all time, a mainstream phenomenon still to this day, or what would you, if you had to delineate it down, what would you regard as your father's legacy?
Man, my father's legacy would be very patriotic. Love your country. This is very 80s, but stay in school. Don't do drugs, kids. I think patriotism, loyalty, family. I think those are his legacies. Yeah.
From the standpoint of everything that he accomplished in the business, in ring, and being an agent and behind the scenes, do you think what would you say would be his most proud accomplishment, so to speak, or achievement in wrestling?
Well, I know one of his favorite matches is the alley fight with Pat Patterson, who was a great friend of our family as well. That was, that's his favorite match. I don't know if that's his favorite accomplishment. Being inducted into the Hall of Fame, that was a pretty big deal for him.
A fan also wanted to ask about his relationship with the Marines and whether or not he was ever invited to Parris Island, South Carolina, or does he have any interaction with the military per se?
So when Sarge, was doing the Pledge of Allegiance, and he was the big American hero, and G.I. Joe and all of that, the Marines thanked him and said thank you. You have no idea how many people are enlisting because of you, and you're really helping us, and we love you. And then when he was the Iraqi sympathizer, they came to him and they were like, can you please stop saying that you're a Marine, and can you stop wearing that insignia on your hat, and can you please, you're giving us a bad name, and he got his country back, so it's okay now. But I have seen rumors of people saying that the Marines sent a cease and desist letters to my dad, and that's not true. He never got any cease and desist letters. I'm not saying that right. Cease and desist. Yes, cease and desist letters, and he never got any of those from them. But he did have a representative come in and be like, "Can you, you're very anti-American right now. Can you stop with the Marines and stuff?" So, and that's kind of when he that's, if you notice, there is a point in time where he stops wearing the campaign cover. And that was why they asked him. And, my dad wasn't doing it to piss the Marines off. He was doing it because it was an angle he was working. So he did. And he started wearing a helmet. I'm sure there's a technical term for that. I don't know. So, but there was never, somebody told me that was a Marine that I met who went to Parris Island. Is that Camp Lejeune in Parris Island, South Carolina?
I just know it's Parris Island.
Yeah.
I'd be remiss if
they were there and they told me that my dad's picture was hanging up somewhere.
That's cool.
There. Yeah. I don't know how true that is because somebody told me that and I've never seen it myself, but somebody did tell me that. And I don't know if it's still up there. I have absolutely no idea, but they did say that whenever they were training that they saw it.
Wow. This is a deep cut. Bill wants to know who provided a $5 super chat. Thanks for that. Love Sergeant Slaughter versus Orient Express member Cato matches, a Canadian by the name of Paul Diamond. Do you have any recollection of those by any chance?
I don't. I really don't know a whole lot about my dad's wrestling career.
Well, that really is a deep cut. So the Orient Express were a tag team in the early to give or take mid 90s in WWF that
who was that again? Because I know the name.
Pat Tanaka and Paul Diamond.
Yeah.
Were the guys.
Yeah.
But still kind of a deep cut. We have just about burned through our hour here. I want to thank you very, very much, Kelly. This has been a very interesting interview and a lot of firsts and issues cleared up here. For the record, where can the fans find you on social media? And do you have anything, appearances or your dad's appearances that you'd like to plug?
Sure. So you can find me on YouTube at Slaughter Daughter. That is my channel. And I actually just interview my dad and we just talk and tell stories. And we actually have an episode tomorrow night for Friday the 13th. It's our spooky Friday the 13th Halloween special. We're going to talk about that house in Connecticut that I may have mentioned. It was haunted. And so we'll talk about that and also other like spooky, crazy, mysterious, like how did that happen stories tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern. You can also find me Slaughter Daughter on Facebook. I also have a profile called Kelly Slaughter. If you send me a friend request, send me a message too, because I get so many requests and a lot of them are just spam and so I have to like go through with a fine tooth comb. So just send me a message and let me know you're there. And I will accept you. And you can find me on Twitter. It's _SGT daughter. I'm also on Instagram, Slaughter Daughter Official.
Perfect. Well, once again, Kelly, I want to thank you for your time tonight. We'll definitely keep in touch and continue to check out your channel and perhaps time permitting in the future, we can have you back for a part 2.
Yeah, I would love it. It was so nice to meet you. And thank you so much for having me on. It
was a pleasure. Fans, that's it for this edition of the Great North Wrestling Podcast. Want to encourage you, if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button, subscribe to the HannibalTV.com, and you'll stay on top of all the interviews that we have planned when they're announced, such as this one. Want to thank Kelly once again, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates.